Do you have access to some nice beaches where the water's really clean on the mainland too? And are
No,
there any towns down there where they're selling real estate? That would be
of
wow.
course.
There's some
Yep.
great buys on the mainland, not far from the beach.
There's a great little town there called
So today we are heading down to the beautiful country of Belize with my new friend Rachel Jensen. Rachel, how are
Hello,
you?
Ray. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this session.
Oh, it's great to have you. It's great to connect. So Rachel, this is, Belize is one of those extraordinary places. Especially me as I'm certified as a scuba diver. I love the crystal clear blue waters of Belize. It's interesting though. I've never, I've never dove in Belize. I've never experienced that big, beautiful blue hole of yours down there. But just before we jump into all this stuff, give us a little backstory about you, Rachel, where you're from, and how you landed in Belize, how long you've been there, and what you're up to.
Yes, of course. So I'm originally from New York and I made my way to Pennsylvania for college. When I was in college, I thought I wanted to do pre-medicine. So I was doing all the track to be pre-med, and I was also taking Spanish. So the school that I was at offered a fantastic program over the summers where you would go abroad and study something specifically. So one program was in Nicaragua. It was a pre-med base, but Spanish. I have the Spanish and I had the pre-med. So I registered for that. I got accepted. I spent quite a bit of time in Nicaragua in between two semesters and loved
Wow.
it. And I came back to school and I was like, you know what? I don't necessarily know if I want to go to medical school anymore. I love traveling. I enjoy speaking Spanish, getting to talk to the locals. So I had a great career advisor though, right? And she said, you know what? Why don't you look into the Peace Corps? She said, apply for the Peace Corps and
Mm.
that'll give you a good break in between you graduating to figure out what you want that next step to be. So I did. I applied to the Peace Corps. I got in to teach English in Panama. This would have been the January following a May graduation. So
Wow.
going from May to January, though, what was I going to do? Same great career advisor said, remember when we were in Nicaragua, because she took us on that Nicaragua trip. She said, remember when we were in Nicaragua, we stopped by this real estate developer. They had a hotel. It was like our relaxing day. We got to hang by the pool, took surf lessons, whatever we wanted to do. And so I said, oh, I remember that site. It was one of the highlights of our trip, right? So she said, well, they're taking interns for 3 months over the summer. Why don't you apply for that? And then just see how it goes. You get to use Spanish, travel a little bit. So I applied. I got accepted. And 2 weeks after graduation, I was on a plane to Managua, Nicaragua. And I
Wow.
remember my mom was like, where are you going? What's the address? Where will you be staying? I'm like, I'll be fine. See you later. And and it ended up being an absolutely life-changing 3 months. I enjoyed my time in Managua. I was living in Managua, Nicaragua, but that's where our offices were for the internship that I was doing. But I would rent a car on the weekends, go travel up and down the coast, go up north to Matagalpa to the coffee growing region, go down south to the beaches of Tola, and just loved it. And the
Hmm.
real estate developer was just starting operations here in Belize.
Oh,
And
wow.
so they said, hey, we need somebody to go to Belize and we have a conference there. So we need somebody to organize the conference and we're starting our operations and all of this. So I was like, yeah, yeah, send me, send me. I had no idea where Belize was. I was Googling the resort that they owned. So I'm like, oh, yeah, that looks good. Blue waters, palm trees, send me. I'm there. Right. So I got here and there's a big sign on Ambergris Key when you land that says welcome home.
Hmm.
And it's nice, that's welcoming. But the moment you step off the little puddle jumper on the island of Ambergris Key, everyone's waving to you, they're smiling. And being from New York, I'm like, what do they want from me? Why is everyone
Yeah.
so nice?
Yeah.
Right. But I ended up just absolutely falling in love with the country. I ended up being here more and more regularly as the properties were starting to get built up. I was building a team here, I had my own department that I was managing at that point. Needless to say, I did not end up going to the Peace Corps. I stayed with the real estate developer and I was with them for about 10 years. So from 2012 to 2022, I was with the real estate developer. And over that time, really found Belize being my home. This was my home base. This is where I lived. This is where I was doing business. This is where I was making friends. This is where my life was, right? And to this day in 2025, it continues to be my home here. So I
Mhm.
still go back and visit
Wow.
family,
Yeah.
whenever I can in the States. And they'll, of course, come down here, especially during cold seasons. Like, this is January we're having,
Yeah.
but it's home. This is where I live.
Yeah, wow, that's great. So the question that comes to mind for me is like when you first started out and you explored Central America, you were living in Spanish-speaking countries. So you were learning Spanish, you were immersing yourself in that. Did you learn it? I mean, did you get quite good with Spanish or?
I was studying Spanish when I was in college. So but when I moved to Nicaragua, I was so shy to speak it. I spent a semester abroad in Sevilla, Spain, right? So
Mm.
I had
Wow.
been around a lot of Spanish and I was pretty fluent by the time that I graduated. We had
Mm.
to defend our senior thesis in Spanish, right? So I
Oh,
was
wow.
comfortable doing all of that.
Hmm.
However, I was so shy, right, to speak it when I got to Nicaragua. They thought in the office, they thought I didn't know any Spanish because I was so quiet all the time. But
Yeah.
it's a bit of a different dialect, right? They have more slang, they have colloquial words that I had no idea what they were talking about. And so it took me a little bit of time before I started feeling comfortable enough to use it.
Yeah.
Now, Belize, English is the official language.
Right.
So you'll still hear Spanish, you'll still hear Caribbean Creole, but it certainly is going to be English, and what business is done in daily life is in English. And so I'm embarrassed to say that I don't speak Spanish anymore. I can understand it still, but I
Yeah.
don't really speak it. Now my
Yeah.
husband is Latino, right? So he speaks Spanish fluently. His side of the family, many of them don't speak English. So I can get by. I can get by. I have my basic words. I can put sentences together very slowly. I can have people talk if it's más despacio,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I really, it's an embarrassing thing to have to say, but I
Yeah.
need to pick it back up now that we're talking about this.
Yeah, well, it's one of the key ideal aspects of Belize is a lot of people love to move to Central America and choose Belize because it's easy, because it's an English speaking country. The thing is with you, you're kind of like this adventurous spirit. You started out in these countries where you're learning Spanish. That's fun. It's exciting.
Mhm.
I mean, when you moved to Belize, was there's this part of you that's going to go, I'm going to lose my Spanish and I really want to keep learning and developing my Spanish, or were you okay with that?
No, I honestly didn't really think about it. I
Really?
didn't think
Okay.
about it because I was still hearing a lot of Spanish because you do still hear a lot of Spanish being spoken here when you go to the mainland, especially the areas that are bordering Guatemala or Mexico. You do tend to have bigger Latino populations there.
Yeah.
But no, I honestly think about it because at the end of the day, everyone's just going to be talking to you in English or you're going to be hearing a lot of English. So I'm not really worried about if I'm going to be able to have a conversation with somebody, right? Or
Mhm.
not, because you know that they're going to be able to talk with you in English.
Making the move abroad is exciting as well as a big decision, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. That's why I created AdventureFreaks.com, a resource built to make your journey easier. Whether you're curious about visa requirements, looking for a trusted lawyer, or need guidance on finding healthcare, a rental, or even your dream home, we've partnered with experts and companies around the globe that can help. These connections aren't just links, they're relationships I've built with trusted experts who genuinely care about helping you find your place abroad. So if you're starting your new chapter, stop by AdventureFreaks.com. It's full of resources to help you make your move abroad a reality. Now let's continue with the rest of the video. Okay. All right, well, Rachel, before we jump into visa and the rents and the
Mm-hmm.
cost of living, what do you think if you wanted to highlight the things that people love about Belize, what really makes it special and what sets it apart from its neighboring counterparts, in
Oh,
your
it's a
opinion?
good question. And Belize is such a small country, right? We only have a population countrywide of about 400,000, and size-wise, it's about the size of Massachusetts. So it's like a big city that is actually a country in itself. And
Mm,
at the end of the day, one of the reasons that I ended up staying here, and I know a lot of other expats have ended up staying here or relocating here, or tourists continue to come back year after year, is because of the people, right? The people here are so incredible and very genuine and welcoming and warm. Belize is generally a service industry, right? The industry here in Belize is tourism and service. So many people who are working here in Belize, Belizeans, they work in the service industry, which means that they're used to foreigners, right? They're
mm,
used to tourists. So there's not this big divide like you have in other countries. We're here in Belize on Ambergris, we're all going to the same bars, we're going to the same beaches on the weekends, we're renting golf carts from the same companies. we're all integrating in. And, it's at that point too, where when you come down on vacation and you're having a great conversation with your bartender, and then you come back next year because you built this relationship. And the next thing you know, you're inviting them up to Virginia to come visit your family. And hey, they're going to come to Virginia and visit your
Hmm.
family, and
Hmm.
you really build this unique bond that I don't really see in other countries. I've traveled all throughout Latin America, all throughout the Caribbean, and many of the destinations that we've stayed in, they're like, yep, here's your drink, or hey, what are you doing in town? But then conversation ends there, where here there's just this genuine connection. So overall, I think it absolutely is the people as a top number one. But then other than that, it's just the atmosphere. It's a tropical country. It's very beautiful. We have the Caribbean, we have mountains, we have rivers and jungles, and it's a very adventurous country. And I
Hmm.
think one of the third reasons that we're seeing a lot of people are enjoying it down here, or personally why I really enjoy it, is because of the freedoms.
Hmm.
In the States, it's just getting a little wild right now. In a lot of countries, it's getting a little wild. Here, people kind of refer to it as the Wild West, right? But, as long as you're not hurting anyone else,
Yeah.
go for it, right? Go for it.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of us kind of miss that sort of freedom that we used to have in other places.
Yeah, that's a big theme, from people leaving Canada and the US is it
Mm-hmm.
feels overregulated and there's just a lot of people that are trying to move away from that and experience freedom again. And you're right. I mean, a lot of times when you go down to parts of Latin America and Belize, there's a feeling of freedom as soon as you get off the plane.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a kind of a wonderful feeling. All right, well, let's dive into for the viewers that are watching, um, they're interested in moving to Belize. What are the visa requirements for them? If there are any minimum income requirements that you know of, especially for the retirees, share that as well.
Yes, of course. So I'm going to start out as a tourist. So if you're coming into this country, you'll get a stamp in your passport for 30 days. If you want to stay longer than 30 days, then you'll go to the immigration office. You'll pay $100 US per person, and they'll stamp you for another 30 days. Now, I have had friends who have been doing that for years, 10 years, 15 years. Maybe they didn't fulfill any of the other residency requirements, or maybe they just weren't living down here full time, or they're going back and forth, whatever the circumstance was. So you can do that, right? As long as you're showing proof of income that your money is not coming from Belize, and that maybe
Mhm.
you own a home here or you have a lease on a property here, right? You take that
Okay.
to the immigration office, they're going to keep stamping you every 30 days. Now,
Okay.
let's say you decided that Belize is where you want to spend time. There are two residency programs. So one of them is called the QRP, Qualified Retired Persons Program. For that one, they just lowered the age. It used to be 45 years or older. Now it's 40 years or older. So you have to be 40
Wow.
years older, and you have to be making $2,000 a month US in passive income. So it cannot
Okay.
be from a job, right? So it can be from investments, it can be from rental properties, it can be from a pension, it can be from anything that's passive. If you're
Okay.
if you're fulfilling that requirement, you do have to put that money in the $2,000 a month into a Belize bank here. That's 2,000 US a month into a Belize bank. And essentially you just fill out an application online and they'll approve you or not. So one of my
Yeah.
clients did this, who was anticipating a move to Belize, and he did it about 2 months before his move, thinking it was going to take him 4 6 months, and he got approved before his trip to Belize even came.
Oh,
So
wow.
he was shocked, right? It doesn't always
Yeah.
take that long, but he was shocked at how easy it was. So you do that, but there are reasons people like that residency. So, for example, you can bring in a container load of items duty free within the first year. You can bring in that container load of items duty free. You can bring in a vehicle duty free that can't be older than 5 years old, right? But you can bring in a boat, you can bring in a golf cart, you can bring in or a car. So one of the three.
Okay.
So people like that. If you're planning to move down here and relocate down here, the QRP makes sense, but you cannot work. You cannot work as a
Okay.
retiree here in the country.
Okay.
The other residency is what we tend to see people who are, serious about living here and spending time here. It's the permanent residency. So in order to qualify for the permanent residency, essentially you have to be in country for 50 out of 52 weeks.
Hmm.
And once you fulfill that requirement, you have to submit a police record, you have to get a clean bill of health, and then from there, your application is submitted.
Okay.
So, one, that permanent residency tends to be more desirable for people because it's permanent. Where the
Mhm.
QRP, the retiree one, you have to renew every year. But once you have the permanent residency, it's good. You have it for life. And after 5 years, you can apply for your nationality here in Belize. You can get your citizenship. So People prefer that if they're planning to be here in the country for a while. But if you're just somebody who's looking for an easier residency and you're able to fulfill the QRP, then that could be a good option too.
Okay, does the permanent residency, does that require the same 2000 per month
No.
pension or?
Permanent, nope. So permanent residency, essentially all you have to do is I mean, time is the big one, is fulfill that requirement of 50 out of 52 weeks for that year. And then once you have that, you have a clean bill of health and you have nothing on your police record. You'll get your police record here in Belize since that's where you've spent the last year. Then they'll approve you. Now the application process is pretty easy to submit, but it just takes a little bit of time for them to approve you. Anywhere from 6 months to 2 years is
Yeah.
what I'm hearing.
So Belize doesn't check to see if people can even take care of themselves, or I mean, like, provide for themselves on that particular visa?
For the QRP, they will.
They do, yeah.
For the qualified person's retirement program, you need that 2000, but no, not for the permanent residency. I think
Wow.
that if you've been
Yeah.
able to live here in Belize for the last 50 out of 52 weeks, then ideally you'd be able to support yourself. So when you're going through that, like out of that 50 out of 52 weeks, you cannot be working here in Belize, right?
Okay.
So you be sustaining your income else from somewhere else or from a job or something along
Yeah.
those lines, but that job cannot be a Belize company. You can work remotely, right? But you cannot be working for a Belizean company during the 50
Yeah.
out of 50 weeks.
Well,
So
that's
I'm
a
going to presume you can make money or you have money if you're able
yeah.
to do that.
Well, so the good thing about that, it seems like almost like a loophole from the QRP or the retirement visa, because let's say somebody doesn't make 2000, maybe they have they're retired on Social Security and all they get on their Social Security income is 1800 a month.
Yep.
So they can still apply and get in through
Yep.
the permanent
Exactly.
residency permit, which is almost like a loophole
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
thing.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay, that's good information. All right. Okay, so let's move on to rentals. I mean, so let's talk about, Rachel, what are some of the areas that are
Mhm.
desirable to live in, and what are the rentals going for the viewers that are interested in moving down? What do they
Oh, good
start at?
question. Yes, good question. So Belize, like we were saying, it's a small country, right? About the size of Massachusetts. But within Belize, we do have different areas and different districts. So one of the most popular for tourists and foreigners and expats is the island of Ambergris Key. It's off the coast of Belize mainland. It's about 26 miles long, but it parallels the reef, the longest living reef in the world. You look right out the window right now and we can see the reef.
Yeah.
So people are drawn to this location for many reasons, but it also tends to be the most expensive. So
Mm.
here you do have a lot of tourism. You have some of the most options here compared to the rest of the country will be here on the island because it's the biggest in terms of tourism and service. But
Mm.
with that being said, it does tend to be more pricey than others. And we're on an island, right?
Yeah.
So things are going to have to get shipped over or sent over. So for example, rental rates, you could typically find a one bedroom, not necessarily on the beach, but a one bedroom for about $750 to $1,000 a month. And then it can go up. I mean, it goes up from there, just depending on what you're looking for, up to $4,000 or $5,000 US a month. But that's going to be
Mm.
for, a single standing beachfront home with 5 bedrooms.
Sure.
So it really depends. There is a big variety. Sometimes people come in and they're like, I want to live where the locals live. And it's like, okay, well, if you're doing that, then you're typically going to be paying about $100. They do it by week. So about $100 a week US is about that rate, $100 US per week. And you're not necessarily going to have the things that you may realize that you need, those creature comforts. Like hot water, for example, is not
Mhm.
necessarily common in local housing.
Mhm.
Air conditioning is not necessarily common either. So if that's
Okay.
something that's important to you, then you probably want to be looking at something a little bit higher.
Okay.
Now, with that being said, though, there's also another district on the mainland called the Cayo district. The Cayo district is like the complete opposite of Ambergris Cays. It's tourism centric in some ways, in many ways actually, but it's more jungly. It's rivers. It's spread out. People who are living there or spending time there tend to have more land. It's agricultural, a lot of agricultural land out there. So you do tend to see the cost of living is less, right? So you
Hmm.
can get a nice rental out there for $500 US a month
Hmm.
versus on the island where they start at 750 a month.
Okay. So when you say living like a local and you pay $100 a week, so it's 400 a month. but you're gonna have, is that like a studio? Is it like a one
Studio,
bedroom?
studio, not a full kitchen. You'll probably have to bring your appliances with you. Here it's very common for local living. You have to provide your own appliances. Some
Yeah.
of them come semi-furnished, right, with a bed at least, but no, you'll have to bring your refrigerator. You'll have to bring your stove. Many times it's just a little kitchenette set up.
Yeah.
So it is a bit different. So it's just setting the expectations, right?
Yeah. So, okay. So you'd pay 400 bucks a month and you're going to be taking cold showers and,
Cool.
and no air conditioning. So you're going to need a good fan too.
Well, I guess that works out, right? If you're warm because there's no air conditioning, you go take a cold shower and cool down.
Right. I bet there's a lot of people in Belize that actually do that. People that move there that do that. Probably a lot of like surfing people that just, don't want all of the major amenities. They just want to live like the locals
Yeah, yeah,
and
and here in Belize, like we tend to spend so much of our time outside, out and about. So we don't necessarily have all of, the frills inside. It's a
yeah.
lot more outside living. So we tend to have verandas or, we're meeting up with friends in the park or, going for a ride up to the beach. So we don't necessarily have that sort of, everything inside like they do in many countries. It's outdoor living.
Yeah. Okay, so the Cayo district is one where you can get some pretty affordable rents. You're saying they start at about 500 there.
Exactly. And this is all in US dollars, right? My numbers are
Yeah.
going to be in US, but yes,
Yep.
that's exactly about right.
Do those include air conditioning? And
They may,
they may.
Coyote tends to be a
Yeah.
little bit cooler
Yeah.
cooler temperatures, so you'll tend to have more windows open. It may not. It just depends entirely on it. But for like a North American quality and standard, you'll have typically have an AC unit.
Okay. All right. And so if people come down and they're like going, wow, I love this place. I just fell in love with it. I love the diving. I love everything about it. Um, What does what can you purchase like an apartment or a home for?
Mm.
What are the going rates for homes around there?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So that again depends entirely where in the country you are. You are going to see that the islands are more expensive, right? Because you're shipping everything over to the island and the cost of living tends to be a little bit more expensive here. So also the average salary is a little bit more than it would be on the mainland. But here, yeah, good question. So studios are typically you're going to see at about 110,000 US.
Okay.
And then you can get up to the $4 million beachfront homes. So
Okay.
it just depends on what someone's looking for. I know that the average two-bedroom condo on the beach, about 1,500 square feet, was about 425,000 US.
Oh wow. Okay.
This is just for the island here, right? This is just for Ambergris Key. Once you go to the mainland, you are able to find that the cost of real estate decreases quite a bit.
Okay.
You can find, for example, in the Cayo district, you can find multiple acres in the house on the multiple acres for $150,000. Maybe you
Okay.
have a river access or you have water access or water frontage or something along those lines. So
Yeah.
you tend to find because on the island here, things are so much more consolidated where you go to the mainland, you have ample land. Remember, it's 400,000 people in the entire country. So you have
Mhm.
a lot of space here and you tend to find on the mainland that it's going to be a lower cost of living.
How many acres would you say you could get
Mhm.
and a house for 150K?
About 4 or 5 acres.
Okay. So
About
that's
4 or 5
nice.
acres. And in the Cayo district, that's where it's very fertile agricultural land too. So, people who dream of having a garden or planting papaya and watermelon and mango, they tend to end up in the Cayo district because that's where you have the right soil for it. If you're more of that beach lover and you want to be able to look right out at the Caribbean waters when you're waking up or walk over to the sea and dip right in, then you'll tend to be in a place like Ambergris, and that's where it's more expensive.
Okay, and Amberhurst, that's the Keys. That's the popular spot where you're right there on the island where you can pretty much walk to the beach or go to the beach and you're in crystal clear water. If you're on the mainland, do you have access to some nice beaches where the water's really clean on the mainland too? And are
No,
there are
entirely.
there any towns down there where they're selling real estate? That would be
Of
wow.
course.
There's some great
Yep.
buys on the mainland, not far from the beach.
Of course. So one of the biggest towns there for we're seeing that foreigners are going to is called Placencia. Now, Placencia is not necessarily where I would recommend for somebody on a budget. Placencia is what I refer to as like the Hamptons or the
Okay.
Cape Cod of Belize. You have the bigger yachts there. You have the larger single family homes. It's about 2.5 hours from Belize City. south of Belize City. Now, if you're going about 2 hours south of Belize City, so only 30 minutes from Placencia, there's a great little town there called Hopkins. Hopkins, and then there's City River. There's a river that runs just south of Hopkins as well. And that little neighborhood is beautiful. It's fun. It's colorful. There's a very big Garifuna influence there. So you have some really, really delicious, tasty food.
Mhm.
But absolutely, Hopkins tends to be more affordable. There, you can find riverfront property for about $25,000 to $30,000 for the land, and then you can build whatever you want on top of it. But you do tend to see the prices in Hopkins compared to an Ambergris Key would be about half.
Okay. So, and there are houses for sale down there?
Oh yeah, yeah, houses for sale, land for sale, because it's not as busy, we'll say, as Ambergris Key, and there's not
Yeah.
as big of a population. It's a small population, about 3 to 4 thousand people. So you don't necessarily have as many options, but you absolutely have properties to own, properties to rent. It's a
Mhm.
really colorful and charming, cute town.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful. That sounds like a really interesting gem in Belize. Now, you mentioned Garifuna. Share
Mhm.
with the viewers what that is.
Sure. So the Garifuna is one of the cultures here. We have 9 cultures here, 9 ethnicities in the country. So this is one that essentially escaped from slavery when and 17, 1800s, I believe it was, and they landed here in Belize
Mhm.
and they were free. So there's a big Garifuna Settlement Day on November 19th every single year. It's when the Garifunas land here in Belize, make a big festival out of it, like great music, great food that's associated with it. But Belize is such a melting pot of culture. So there's the Garifuna, which is one. But in addition to that, we have a very big Lebanese population, a very big Chinese population, a very big English or American, we'll say, expat population, Latino, of course, right? Because we're in Central America. We have a big Mayan population, Mennonites, that sometimes
Mhm.
is a shock to people, right?
Yeah.
Because they do a lot of the produce agriculture here in the country. They do a lot of building as well. A lot of the homes will refer to as Mennonite homes, but it's
Mm.
because the Mennonites are the ones who built them, right? They're prefab essentially. So we tend to have a lot of cultural events here within this melting pot.
And that just makes the food that much better. You know,
Mm-hmm. Oh yes.
when you get to the food portion, it makes it so much better. But let's dive into some of the cost of living down there.
Perfect.
So for people that are renting or you buy a condo or you got this home, what is the average do you think people pay for utilities? Like,
Sure.
electric, water,
Yep.
Wi-Fi, and also what's cell service going for down there as well?
Okay, great question. So I'm going to just use an example of a one-bedroom condo, right? So if you're coming down here, you're spending time, you're in a one-bedroom condo. Typically, if you have an air conditioning unit, you're going to expect your utilities to be about $100 to $150 US per month.
Okay.
And that's if your AC is running all the time. It could be a little bit
Okay.
more than that during the time of year where it's warmer outside, but that would be with one split AC operating.
Okay.
Water, if you're on public water, it's about 14 $15 US a month. Again, all of this is average, depends
Yep.
entirely on consumption, but
Yep.
basing it on, maybe one or two people living within a one bedroom. So 14 to $15 US a month. Internet, you're typically looking at about, I would say, if you're estimating 25 to $30 US a month. Obviously, you can get higher speed if you want, and that'll cost you more. And
Okay.
then a cell phone plan. So if you're a foreigner, you're not able to get what they call the post paid. It has to be
Mhm.
the prepaid. So you'll be able to get, you'll have to go to the store and get your card. But you'll have minutes essentially, and you'll put $20, we'll say, towards a plan, and then you'll be able to use that until it depletes. But people
Okay.
here typically are able to do that with $15 to $20 US a month.
Okay. So $20 a month. Do you
Yeah.
guys do any gas down there, propane?
We do gas and propane. I don't know actually what that cost is. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, I can get that answer, but I don't know what that is. That's something my husband deals with. Whenever the
Okay.
gas tank, the tank things goes out, I'm like, all right, you go take it to town, you go get it filled. Now there are services and companies here that will, come by and fill it for you if you have a larger tank.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah, no
funny.
worries.
I don't know what it is off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
just send me that info. That
I
it's
will.
usually quite low per every
Uh-huh.
every month or every 2 months people pay for that. But all right,
I
great.
know we do have two propane tanks. I don't honestly even know the size of them, but we do have a gas dryer. And then in addition to that, we do have a gas stove. So we have one
Yeah.
per tank. And I don't cook much, right? So it's usually once every 6 months that we're replacing the gas one. And for the dryer, it's usually once a month. But we do quite
Okay.
a bit of laundry. But again, it just it all comes back to consumption.
Okay. All right, great. And how much do you think you budget for groceries? What would a retiree need to budget down
Yep.
there?
So you can spend a lot in food if you're buying foreign or imported items,
Sure. Yeah.
right? So I went to the grocery store up north here last night, and the guy that owns it, I go in there quite a bit. The guy who owns it, he's like, "Did you see all the items in the grocery store or in the freezer? I got so many items." And I'm like, it honestly felt like I was back in a grocery store in the United States.
Uh,
There was Luigi's Italian ice, which I remember
yes.
eating all the time as a kid, flipping them over and shaving up the ice, right? So of course I had to get some of that. And then they had bagel bites and they had hot pockets and then they had Panera soup, that you just
Uh-oh.
heat up again. So you can spend a lot of money on those imported items if you want to,
Sure.
or
Yeah.
you can shop the local brands and cut your cost in half. So I
Okay.
would say if you're budgeting about $400 to $500 a month US in groceries, but that's not going for, 28 Belize dollars for the Italian ices that were just imported from the States,
Yeah.
right? So you just got to shop wisely. You can shop locally. So for example, just to give you an example of prices, so you can get a tray of eggs. It's about 36 eggs, organic, comes from the farm. You can get that typically for about $7 US.
Hmm.
Um, but you can get local butter, for example, like nice, fresh butter for about $7.50 US, or you can get an imported brand for double that.
I
So you just
okay.
have to be a little conscious with it. And it's same with restaurants, right? You can go to the touristy restaurants and you can pay two, three, four times the price of what you would be paying if you're going to a local place. You
Right.
can go to the local stands here, get, nice plate of local food, rice and beans and stewed chicken and coleslaw and tortillas and all of that for $7.50 US. Right. Or
Okay.
you can go to one of the tourist places and then get a meal there for, 25 US. So it
Sure.
just really depends on how you play it
Yeah. Okay. So the groceries you're saying you guys spend about 400 to 500 per month?
per month.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I would say for a retiree. I mean, we splurge every now and again, right? I'm like, let's get this cheese or let's go get this. So it
Yeah.
tends to be a little more. We also have a 1-year-old. So, we're still buying formula and all of that. But
Yeah.
yeah.
For an individual,
Hmm.
a retiree that's just down there alone, what do you think they'd pay?
One person on their own, you're
Yeah.
probably going to spend 300.
300. Okay.
Yeah, it depends. Again, it all depends on what somebody's looking for, right? So you can go buy, we're talking about imported items again. You can go buy imported strawberries for $9 a carton, or
Mm.
you can buy 10 bananas for $2 US or $1 US,
Yeah.
right? So just shopping locally and being a little bit more budget conscious. I know people who've had a budget of $100 Belize a week just to buy food, and it works.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right, great. Now let's dive into restaurants. So the food around there, you mentioned you can go to a local stand and get a really amazing dish for
Mhm.
$7.50. What other types of foods do they offer, costs, and what do you think you need to budget per month for eating out?
Again, comes back to someone's like personal preference. You can go to the local burrito corner stand over here and get a nice big breakfast burrito for $3.50 US,
Hmm.
or you can go and get a $20 US breakfast from Blue Water Grill, for example. Right. So I would say on average, if you're eating pretty conservatively, maybe you're dining out to a nice restaurant once a week, we'll say, doesn't matter, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And then the rest are more of the local places. I would say about $300, $300 to $400 a month.
Okay. And that's eating out once a week.
Yeah, once a week for a nice meal, including an appetizer, main dish, couple cocktails. About 100 a week would be, and that's for two. I would say for two people, to
Yeah.
go to a nice meal. Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
So you're looking at maybe 200 to 300 for a single person.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds about right.
Rachel, how do people get around? A lot of the viewers that want to leave the US or want to leave Canada, they're looking for simplicity. They're looking to just find a community where they can pretty much walk everywhere. You
Mhm.
know, is that possible in Belize?
Oh, yes, certainly it's possible. In fact, a lot of people do tend to walk places, they'll have bicycles, depends where in the country they are. If you're in a village, like a small village, you can tend to walk to the little shops that are there, but you're going to need some sort of transportation to get to the bigger towns. There
Mm.
are buses, public buses that'll come on the mainland, so you can get around, just having a bus or a taxi will take you places. Bikes work for the villages or the small towns. Here in
Mm.
Ambergris, we drive golf carts. So a lot of people tend to have, a golf cart that'll be able to get them north and south. The island here is growing quite a bit.
Mhm.
So we'll see that, if you're living north or you're living south, you really do need to have transportation here on the island because it
Okay.
can be fairly expensive to take cabs everywhere. But on the mainland, you can get a cab very quite easily and pretty affordably to get
Okay.
from point A to point B, or you take the bus. There are a couple different bus companies. One we call it the chicken bus, where you have everyone there crammed together with the chickens, with the luggage, with everything. Or you can take, the nice one where you have your own seat, recline a little bit, and have the
Yeah.
air conditioning. But it's still affordable to do that. But the towns, like we were saying, San Pedro, Ambergris Key, Placencia, Hopkins, they're very, very walkable areas. Cayo district, it tends to be a little bit more spread out because you have the larger acreage. Now,
Mhm.
San Ignacio town, absolutely, you can walk around everywhere. But if you're living on the outskirts of San Ignacio, you'll probably want a vehicle or a trusted cab driver or a bike.
Yeah. Okay. And if you rely on the buses, if you live somewhere where you got to jump on a bus every now and then to just kind of
Uh-huh.
trek across town or something, what do the buses charge?
Seven Belize. So if you're going from Belize City to San Ignacio, which is about a 2 hour ride, it's about a $7 Belize. So anything closer than that is going to be less. So it's $3.50 US.
That's a good deal.
Oh, it's a very good deal. Very
Okay. All right. Great, Rachel. So, okay, now let's get into the entertainment. The
good.
big entertainment in Belize is always diving, snorkeling. You gotta love water to move to Belize. But well, what do people typically do down there? What are the things that they do, and what are the costs associated with those things?
So good question. So yes, Belize is traditionally and historically known for all the water activities, right? So the snorkeling, the diving, the fishing, boating, sailing, your activities are going to be happening in the water, especially on the islands or along the coast. Now, once you go to the mainland, you tend to have more activities like horseback riding, cave tubing, jungle trekking, hiking, more mainland zip lining, right? More mainland activities or inland activities.
Hmm.
But I'll be honest, I'm not really a water person. Like, I'm not. I dove for a while, but then I couldn't regulate, so I couldn't. I really don't get in the water all that often. But it's the lifestyle here that I just really really enjoy. So for us here in Belize and the Latino culture, you'll tend to find that family getting together, being with people and around people is a very, very big part of the culture. So Sundays, for example, Sundays are the big family days here. So you'll see golf carts full of people heading to the beach, and they'll have their cooler with them, and they're going to be spending time with their family but also being able to get in the water. So you do tend to see quite a bit.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's just going to other people's homes. Here what we tend to see is a lot of activities are, of course, focused around the water, but it's also going to be very focused around families in the community. So from there, people have their own groups, people have their own clubs, people, volunteer quite a bit. That's one of the big activities for people who are living here. They'll tend to volunteer at the Humane Society. There's a Hope Haven, which is a shelter for women and kids, and they always need volunteers of different sorts. The schools have a lot of volunteers. So it's a very community centric environment. So, to do the volunteering things to get together with friends, virtually costs nothing.
Hmm.
But if you're planning to go hang out at Blue Bayou, which is a wonderful little restaurant that has in water tables and they'll serve you in the water and whatnot, you can, consider it a bar restaurant experience, and you're looking to do that for, 50 dollars just depending on your consumption. Now,
Hmm.
if you want to dive, right, if you want to dive, if you want to snorkel, typically you can do a one tank dive for between 35 to $45 US. And if you want to go do a boat, like one of the biggest activities here that we like to do are the boat days. So you'll get a boat, you'll do fishing, and then you'll do a beach barbecue on the backside of the island where you have the sunset coming down, the crystal clear turquoise waters, and you can typically rent a boat for about 400 US for the day, 450 depending on the season.
Hmm.
So that's one of our favorite activities. You bring 10 friends with you and you all split that and it becomes
Yeah.
very reasonable, right?
Yeah.
And then just depends. We have seasons here, right? So high season is going to be around Thanksgiving to about May. So some of the touristy activities or some of the activities that the tourists may be doing are going to get more expensive. And
Hmm.
then you have that slow season. And slow season is when you can find the local deals and the local rates and costs of things just go down a bit.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that sounds awesome. So a lot of outdoor type activities and it sounds like a lot of them are are free. Do they have like any live entertainment
Oh,
where they
all the
have like
time.
they do?
All the time. Live music, karaoke is one of the big ones.
Oh,
They have
okay.
jam sessions, guitar circles.
Oh, do they have drum circles?
Maybe
Anybody?
in Hopkins because there's a big Garifuna population there, and they do a lot of the drumming. So probably
Yeah.
in Hopkins. Are you a
Okay.
drummer? Are you
I
a drummer?
actually, you can see a couple of djembes behind me. They're African drums that you
Yes. Uh-huh.
right there.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I have a bunch of those, and we used to do just fun drum circles in the backyard with a lot of the neighbors, and the kids would come by,
Uh-huh.
and it was really it's fun. I haven't done one in quite some time, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a fun community thing to do. All right, well, the last thing we have, Rachel, is healthcare. Everybody's always interested. If I'm going to move down there, what is the healthcare like, and is it affordable? What can you share about that?
Great question. Well, it's very affordable. The healthcare here is very affordable and it's getting better and better. Remember, we're a small country, population wise of 400,000, so about the same size of New Orleans. So,
Mhm.
you can't really compare US medical care to Belize healthcare because it's just such a much larger population up there. So, here, where we tend to find is a lot of the private facilities, the private healthcare, hospitals, clinics, whatnot, are going to be in Belize City. In Belize City, that's where you have the largest number of specialists. You have some really, really great care there, really great doctors, who can take care of a lot of different elements. Belize is strong in general issues, but if for anything that's really extreme or something that maybe is not necessarily very common, I would recommend maybe going up to our neighboring country, Mexico, and going to the healthcare and
Mhm.
facilities there. Or I know a lot of people have gone to Guatemala because again, it's a small country, small population, so they may not necessarily have done the surgery that you need a lot, right?
Right,
But in
right.
Mexico, where there's a much bigger population, they probably have.
Mhm.
So for complex issues, I would say it's not quite there yet. But for anything that's pretty general, if you need to go get your teeth cleaned and your x-rays done, you can do that for 30 US dollars.
Mhm.
If you just want a general wellness checkup, you can typically do that for 75 Belize, so 37, 40 US
Okay.
dollars. And a lot of
Wow.
times people tend to pay out of pocket for this, right? Now you can get insurance through there are a few international insurance companies, Bupa, for example, but you can typically get expat insurance through them should you decide that you want that, and you can decide on the level of care that you want. Do you want to just be covered in that country? Do you want to be covered in that area? Do you want to be covered in the United States as well? Right. If
Mhm.
you're going to be covered in the US as well, your monthly cost is going to skyrocket, but
Mhm.
you do have those sort of options.
What is
So
the name of that company? Boop?
Bupa, Bupa, Bupa.
Okay. I've never heard of
And I
them.
had,
Okay.
insurance here as well, and I ended up having it for like 4 or 5 years, and we just never used it. Right? We
Yeah.
never used it because I would and ultimately just pay out of pocket, and then because the out of pocket cost was fairly minimal, like, well,
Yeah.
I got to put all the receipts now and then have them reimburse me, but they're not going to reimburse me until I hit this deductible, right? So, I mean, again, insurance is always a risk, right? You're either going to
Yes.
need it and be really happy that you have it, or you're not going to need it at all.
Hmm.
So it just really depends. But you do tend to find that your out of cost pockets are high. And there are, like I said, great clinics, great facilities, many of them in Belize City, but Ambergris Key does have great facilities as well, as does Orange Walk on the mainland. And
Hmm.
then Coyote District has some great facilities too.
Okay. If people wanted to get some insurance and have some
Mm.
form of coverage, especially like retirees down there, do you have any idea what they'd pay or no?
No. So, I mean, again, it all comes back to the level that you want. It depends on how much you want covered. It depends on any elements that you have previously, any
Okay.
pre-existing medical conditions. But I would say the best thing that you can do is just reach out to them directly, and then from there they'll be able to give you a quote based on what you want. I know, like we paid a lot. I paid about 500 US a month,
Hmm.
but it was because I wanted to be covered in the States as well. I had a very low deductible and a couple of other things. So, at that end of the day, I was like, I don't need to be paying that. I'll go to the
Yeah.
doctor maybe once or twice a year. Even when we had our baby, we ended up paying for that out of pocket. Then it was about $3,000 US for the doctor, for the anesthesiologist, for the hospital, for medicine, for all of that.
Hmm.
And I found that to be much more reasonable, especially when you compare it to US medical care. Whew,
Yeah.
those are
But
outrageous.
you paid 3,000 in Belize.
We ended up having the birth in Mexico, but it would have been a pretty comparable cost here in Belize. We did look at different costs here, and we did all of our checkups. Everything was in Belize City. I was getting sonograms and the whole thing for 35 US dollars. Private care, private facilities.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yep.
spectacular, the prices. That's everything, Rachel. We've covered everything. Is there anything else you can think of that we didn't discuss
Whew,
that you could share
good
with the viewers
question.
thinking about possibly moving down to Belize?
Yeah, good question. So I'd say, come on down on a trip first and plan to go to a different couple areas, right? Because each area, again, small country, but each area and each district is so entirely different. Hopkins on the Caribbean, that Garifuna town we talked about, is going to be so different from Placencia, which is only 30 minutes away, which is so different from Ambergris Key, which is like a big tourism and diving hub, versus Cayo, which is inland and agriculture. And so, I think one of the best things to realize is it's not one size fits all. It's not, it's not, I can't tell you this is the perfect place for you, because there are many different areas within the country. So plan to take a trip down, spend a few days in each of the locations, see where it feels right, enjoy it. And, the one thing I always, want people to remember too is it doesn't have to be a forever move. Come down, test drive living here. It doesn't have to be forever. Put your things in storage, get a long-term renter in your home. There are ways to make it not feel as permanent if you're not necessarily ready for that permanent move. Some of you are. Some like, I'm done, hands up, I'm moving, and that's
Yeah,
good. We'd love to have you down here.
yeah,
But it's a really beautiful country. It's a much slower pace of life. Don't necessarily come in wanting things now, 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 because it'll just drive you crazy. Even when you just go to the restaurants, you have to ask for the bill most of the times. They're not going to just hand it over to you like we're used to in North America.
mm,
So little lifestyle changes like that. But the best advice I can do is, stay humble, stay willing to learn, and you'll just find you'll have a fantastic time down here.
yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Well, thank you, Rachel Jensen. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to share all this wonderful information about the beautiful country of Belize. I truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Ray. This was fantastic. I'm glad we did this. It's a wonderful country, small and mighty, and I'm looking forward to folks who want to come down and see it.
All right. Well, you have a great rest of the day, Rachel, and
Thank
I'll talk to you
you.
soon.
Thank you. You too, Ray. Have a good day.